All right. So let's dive into something pretty strange today. Unidentified drones. And I know what you're thinking. Here we go again, another UFO thing.
Yeah.
But trust me, this was different.
Yeah, you're right. This isn't just some blurry photos or grainy videos. What makes this so interesting to look at is the sources are incredibly reliable.
Yeah.
We're talking about firsthand accounts from a seasoned News Nation correspondent, a forensic psychologist,
Right.
someone who literally studies the criminal mind, and a body language expert known for their observation skills.
That's what really hooked me too. I mean, these aren't just, random people saying they saw something strange in the sky. These are people who, their professions rely on them being accurate and good at analysis. They saw these drones with their own eyes in different places, and they're all saying the same thing, that something unusual is going on.
Right, and they're very detailed, consistent, and they've ruled out the usual suspects like planes or normal drones.
Right.
And the big thing is they're all kind of raising flags about the official responses they've gotten. It's a mix of denials and downplaying, which just makes it even more interesting.
Right.
So the big question is, what are these things? And why the disconnect between what these experts are seeing and what the authorities are saying?
Right. Okay. So let's start with Rich McHugh, the News Nation correspondent.
Yeah.
He was covering those initial sightings in New Jersey. Those reports coming out of Monmouth County.
Right.
He thought this was going to be a fun, light story.
Yeah.
Chance to debunk, some overblown claims.
Right.
But that all changed when he actually saw the drones himself.
Well, and think about it. His experience as a journalist is so crucial here. He's trained to be skeptical, to report accurately.
Right.
He's not going to be easily swayed by some sensational story. The fact that he was shaken by what he saw really says a lot.
Yeah, he went from being a skeptic to saying it felt like he was in a sci-fi movie.
Wow.
He saw dozens and dozens of these things, and he described them as fixed-wing aircrafts.
Okay.
So for those of you who, like me, are not aviation experts,
Right.
that means they have wings like a plane, not rotors like a helicopter.
Yeah.
So these weren't just like those little quadcopter drones that you see buzzing around.
Yeah.
These were V-shaped. They had multiple blinking lights, moving silently and incredibly fast.
And the silence is a big thing.
Yeah.
Most drones that we know of, even larger ones, have that noticeable hum.
Right.
But these were completely silent, which just adds to the mystery.
Totally. And, it wasn't just him. He said that even local law enforcement had documented sightings like this. But here's where it gets weird. Homeland Security dismissed all those reports as just myth-identified planes.
What?
I know, right?
How do you mistake dozens of V-shaped silent objects for a plane?
Yeah.
That is very concerning. I mean, what possible explanation could there be? Is it just genuinely misidentified, or is something else going on? Are they trying to downplay it?
Yeah, you have to wonder, right? And, he actually did consider it could be a secret military operation.
Okay.
But if that's not the case, he seems to lean towards a very unsettling explanation.
Right.
Which brings us to our next witness, Dr. Katherine Ramsland.
Okay.
Now, she saw something similar, but this time it was in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Almost like whatever these things were migrated from New Jersey.
Hold on. This migration thing is fascinating to me. I mean,
Right.
It's just organization, purpose.
Yeah.
So if these are just random sightings, why would they be moving in this way?
Right, exactly.
Makes you wonder, are we looking at multiple types of drones, or is this one thing but with different behaviors?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hear what Dr. Ramsland has to say.
Okay.
She describes seeing multiple drones with red blinking lights, moving in formation and even changing colors. Again, nothing like your typical airplane or drone. They're flying low, moving fast, and she even mentioned these weird spiraling movements.
And again, we're seeing this unusual movement emphasis.
Right.
It's not just how they look, but how they're acting. And remember, she's a forensic psychologist.
Right.
She's trained to analyze patterns and motivations. So when she says something's unusual, that really carries weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And get this, on that same clear night, her friends, who were in completely different locations, also reported increased drone activity.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just a localized thing. And the fact that multiple people with different backgrounds and expertise are all observing the same thing adds a lot of credibility to these accounts, don't you think?
Absolutely. It really strengthens the case for this being a genuine phenomenon.
Yeah.
And, much like Rich McHugh, she also expressed concern over the official response.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof,
Right.
And she highlighted potential national security implications, especially if these drones aren't something that we've created.
Right. Okay, so we've got two very credible witnesses, both describing these strange silent drones, and both expressing frustration with this lack of transparency.
Yeah.
And then we have our third witness, Scott Rouse, the body language expert. He observed something completely different in Tennessee.
Oh, wow. And that's what makes this so interesting. We're not just dealing with one type of drone, potentially multiple, each with their own characteristics.
Right.
It's almost like these sightings are challenging what we know about drone technology,
Yeah, totally. So he described seeing these round drones with a ring of spinning lights that almost appeared to be changing shape.
Oh.
And he even mentioned how hard it was to actually get them on video, even though they were very clear in person. It's like they defy documentation, you know what I mean?
That's an interesting point. We live in a world where everyone has a camera in their pocket, but these drones, you can't get a clear picture of them.
Yeah.
So is this a limitation of our technology, or is there something else going on?
Right, exactly. So now we have three incredibly reliable witnesses, all describing strange drone activity, but with some key differences.
Yeah.
We've got the V-shaped drones with blinking lights seen in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Right.
And then these round, shape-shifting drones with spinning lights in Tennessee. What do you think about all this?
Well, it's like piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah.
Each account adds a piece, but we're still missing the big picture. Are these different types of drones all connected somehow, or are they totally different phenomena?
Right.
And what explains that consistent effort to just dismiss all these sightings as something normal? These are all questions we're going to have to think about as we kind of dig deeper into this.
All right, listeners, so we've just scratched the surface of this. We've heard from three incredible witnesses, each with their own unique perspective.
Yeah.
And we're left with more questions than answers. But stick with us. We're just getting started. Stay tuned as we unpack these accounts and explore these possible explanations for what's happening in our skies. It's easy to get lost in the shapes, the lights, the movements.
Right.
But what really gets me is the why.
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And what are the motives?
Right?
I mean, if these aren't military,
Right.
then who's controlling them and what are they trying to do?
That's the thing that makes it so unsettling, right?
Yeah.
These aren't just things floating around. They're exhibiting behaviors that suggest a plan, like they have a purpose.
Right.
Like the formations, the movements, the way they evade capture, it all points to something intentional, something we don't know about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say for a minute that these aren't from here.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Because we talk about technology from another country.
Right.
And what does that mean for our security?
Yeah. It's a chilling possibility, isn't it? If
Yeah.
these drones have technology that's beyond anything we're capable of. It really raises questions about if we can even detect them or defend against them.
Right.
And it also makes you wonder, what are they trying to do? Are they just watching,
Yeah.
gathering information?
Right.
Or could they actually be a threat?
I keep coming back to the official response or the lack of one.
Yeah.
It's like they're just trying to ignore it.
Right?
I mean, if they are investigating, they're doing a really bad job of telling us.
And that lack of transparency just fuels the speculation and the distrust.
Right.
It's like they're saying, trust us, everything's fine.
Right.
But they won't give us any evidence or explanations.
Yeah. It's like they're almost daring us to jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's kind of working.
Right.
I mean, I've been going down these rabbit holes of conspiracy theories, which I usually stay away from.
Yeah.
But when you don't know who to believe,
Right.
it's
Ah.
hard.
Yeah, I think that's a natural response, though, when you're dealing with something unknown.
Yeah.
We all want explanations, and when we don't have them, we try to come up with our own. And sometimes those are a little more fantastical than what's actually happening.
Okay, but let's try to use some critical thinking here.
Okay.
Is there any other explanation for why what the witnesses are seeing, what the authorities are saying, are so different?
I mean, there are a few things we can think about.
Yeah.
Maybe there's just been some miscommunication, like a breakdown in information between the agencies. Or maybe they know about these drones, but they're trying to keep it quiet so people don't panic.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Like, if we tell them, they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of patronizing?
Yeah.
Like they think we can't handle it.
It's a tough situation, you know?
Yeah.
On the one hand, you want to be transparent and let everyone know what's happening.
Right.
But on the other hand, you don't want to scare everyone.
But isn't it worse to hide information and then have it come out later?
Right.
I mean, doesn't that just make people trust you even less?
You're absolutely right. Secrecy almost always backfires, especially in situations like this where you have all these credible witnesses
Right.
and all this evidence coming out. It's like trying to hold back a wildfire.
Right.
Eventually, it's going to get out.
Okay, so we have these two very different stories.
Yeah.
You have the eyewitness accounts, which are very detailed and consistent,
Right.
and then you have the authorities who are being very dismissive and not really saying anything.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
Right.
I mean, as regular people, how do we deal with this uncertainty?
That's a great question, and I think it's something we all struggle with.
Yeah.
Especially with all the information we're bombarded with every day.
Right.
How do we even know what's real and what's not?
Right, exactly.
How do we look at the evidence and come to our own conclusions?
I think that's what I love about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We're not just giving people information,
Right.
but we're trying to give them the tools to think critically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's about recognizing that there's so much we don't know, and we have to acknowledge that and kind of be okay with that.
Yeah.
Both in terms of technology and the information that's not being shared with us.
So what advice would you give our listeners?
Okay.
And they're hearing these accounts, and they're probably feeling intrigued and a little freaked out, just like we are.
Yeah.
But what should they do?
I would say the most important thing is to stay curious, but stay grounded.
Okay.
Don't dismiss these eyewitness accounts just because they don't fit with what the authorities are saying, but also be careful about jumping to conclusions or believing everything you hear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information out there, so you have to be careful.
So it's about finding that balance between being skeptical and being open-minded.
Exactly.
Don't just believe everything you hear,
Right.
but don't immediately dismiss something just because it seems strange.
Exactly. And remember, even the experts we've talked about today don't have all the answers.
Oh.
They're just sharing what they saw and how they're interpreting it. But they also recognize that this is a mystery and there's a lot we still don't know.
Okay, so we've established that we don't have all the answers.
Right.
But based on what we do know, is there anything we can say about the technology behind these drones?
Okay.
I mean, some of these descriptions are pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Shape-shifting, silent propulsion. I mean, how is that even possible?
That's where things get really interesting from a technology perspective.
Okay,
Let's take that silent propulsion.
okay.
Most drones use propellers, which make a lot of noise.
Right.
But there are new technologies that could allow them to fly almost silently.
Like, give me an example.
Well, one possibility is ionic propulsion.
Okay.
It basically uses high voltage to create an ionic wind that pushes the aircraft forward.
Okay.
It's still pretty new, but it could be incredibly quiet.
So it's not totally crazy.
Right.
I mean, there's some actual science behind this silent propulsion idea.
Exactly. And then there's the shape shifting.
Right.
We might not be able to create drones that completely change shape, but there are a lot of advancements in flexible materials and adaptive structures.
Right.
So maybe what these witnesses saw wasn't actual shape shifting,
Yeah.
but just a subtle change in the drone's configuration.
Got it. So it's possible that what they saw was just a change in how the drone was structured.
Yeah, and I think that highlights how our perception can be limited.
Right.
Even trained observers can misinterpret things, especially when it's something they've never seen before or it's happening really fast.
Yeah. But even if we account for those perception errors,
Yeah.
these accounts still suggest some pretty advanced technology.
Right.
Technology that, as far as we know, we don't have.
And that brings us back to the question of where did these things come from? If
Yeah.
they're not from here, then who built them?
Right.
Who has the resources and the motivation to do that?
Yeah. Those are the big questions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't have the answers.
Right.
But I think it's important to at least consider the possibility that this is something beyond what we currently understand.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is so valuable about these deep dives.
Yeah.
It's about opening our minds to what's possible.
Right.
And pushing the boundaries of our knowledge.
Right.
And being okay with the fact that there are still mysteries out there.
It's about staying curious,
Exactly.
not letting the lack of answers shut down our sense of wonder.
Exactly. And sometimes the best questions are the ones we can't answer yet.
As we've been talking, I can't help but think, if I saw these myself,
Yeah.
what would I do?
Right.
Would I just think it was, a trick of the light? Or would I feel that same sense of awe and kind of uneasiness that they describe?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how we react to the unknown.
Yeah.
our experiences, our beliefs, even our culture. It all shapes how we see the world.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering how much of our reaction is just based on what we already think is possible.
Right.
Like, do we just dismiss things because they don't fit into what we understand?
Yeah, you're talking about cognitive bias. Okay. We all have these mental shortcuts we use to understand things.
Right.
But they can also keep us from seeing things that are outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
So it's totally possible that someone could see these drones and just think, oh, it's just something normal.
Right.
Because the idea of this advanced technology is just too weird for them.
It's like we need to kind of rethink what's possible, especially with how fast technology is changing.
Right.
I mean, what was science fiction a few years ago is happening now.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be humble,
Okay.
to admit that we don't know everything.
Right.
And to be open to the idea that maybe what we know about the world isn't the whole story.
So let's say you're out one night and you see something in the sky that you can't explain.
Okay.
What should our listener do?
Okay.
How should they approach that?
First of all, don't ignore what you see. If something seems weird or out of place, trust your gut.
Yeah.
And try to document it if you can.
Okay.
Take pictures, videos, write down what you see.
But what if you can't get a good picture or video?
Yeah.
I mean, we heard that these drones are hard to capture on camera.
Right, and that's when those notes are really important.
Yeah.
Describe the shape, the size, the color, how it was moving, anything that stood out.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to talk to other people who might have seen it too.
Right.
Because then you can compare notes and maybe figure out what you saw.
Yeah, two heads are better than one, especially when you're trying to understand something really strange.
Exactly, and remember, there are places you can report these sightings.
Okay.
Like MUFON.
Right.
They collect and analyze reports of UFOs.
So it's not about jumping to conclusions or coming up with crazy theories.
Right.
It's about being a good observer,
Yeah,
documenting what you see,
right.
and finding credible sources of information.
Exactly. And most importantly, stay curious.
Yeah.
The world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the things we least expect to see can lead to the biggest discoveries.
This whole deep dive has been a trip.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
A little scary, but definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
We started with these drone sightings.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about how we see things, the limits of technology, and even how we approach the unknown.
It's amazing how one topic can lead to so many other questions, isn't it?
It is.
And I think that's what's so great about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at one thing.
Right.
We're exploring how everything's connected.
Right.
And how much there still is to discover.
Okay, so as we wrap up this look into unidentified drones,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from this?
Just keep looking up.
Okay.
Keep your minds open to the wonders and the mysteries that we still don't understand.
Right.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll have the answers to these questions.
Yeah.
But until then, let's enjoy exploring and learning.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to think about all this.
Yeah.
Until next time,
Yeah.
stay curious, keep learning,
Yeah.
and remember,
Yeah.
the truth is out there somewhere.